Welcome into Carp's Corner. We want to dive into a lot of different stuff today. A lot of great topics out there. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on. So we begin to turn the page here into November, starting to cool down, starting to get some of these big playoff pushes for the college football playoff. And then in the NFL, starting to come into focus as well as far as where some of these teams are. I believe if Pittsburgh wins Monday night, then there will be almost half of the teams in the AFC will have at least 5 wins. So there's, or maybe more than half. So there's a lot of stuff moving around, a lot of moving parts, and a lot of differences, obviously, between the two conferences. Before we get into some of the college football parity, because if you looked at this weekend, absolute insanity. And so we'll dive into that and kind of round up the show with that. But wanted to start with the NFL. Odell Beckham Jr., OBJ, put on waivers by the Cleveland Browns. Clear waiver claims have to be submitted, I believe, by 4 o'clock on Monday. They announce it on Tuesday where he's going to be and what it will potentially look like. We'll potentially hear some of the contract issues and stuff they were getting sorted out. I know Cleveland was trying to convert a large portion of his salary to signing bonus, and I think he was going to be willing to go along with that because that will help get him his freedom. And also that'll make him more appealing to maybe teams higher up in the waiver priority stack to bring him on. And those are going to be teams that aren't as good. And the last thing Cleveland wants to see is Odell Beckham Jr. playing for the Steelers, playing for the Ravens, or even really playing for any other playoff contender in the AFC. Move him to the other side so that the only chance you have to see him is going to ultimately be in the Super Bowl. So we'll see how that goes, see where he goes. Trying to look through this, Sean Payton came out, a lot of people have linked him to the Saints. I don't know if they have the financial ability to even do that. Even at a league minimum salary, Sean Payton made it sound like they don't have the financial cap space to pull on an Odell Beckham Jr. I think Green Bay, now they're going to be way at the bottom as far as waiver claim priority based upon how well they're doing. Recent loss should help them since they lost to Kansas City on Sunday, move up a little bit. But that would be potentially another place I could see him going. If you're talking about pushing the chips all in with your veteran quarterback, it would make sense potentially to bring a guy like him on, even if it's just for a half season rental, someone to play opposite of Devontae Adams to possibly chew up some of those opportunities there. I don't think a San Francisco would potentially bring him on, although it could make sense for him maybe being on the outside. And I'm looking at a lot of these AFC teams because I think Baltimore, and it's a cultural thing. I think that they would be able to absorb him in the locker room and be okay. But that's another place that they could potentially look. And they've had a tendency, as if you look at the Ravens, to bring in some of these older receivers and to see if they can squeeze any of their last lifeblood out. And I think that there's a number of years that OBJ will have left. I don't know if they'll be what he was before. But just trying to rack my brain to see some teams that he could potentially land with and what that might look like. Or I say the Tennessee Titans that are rolling. I mean, Mike Vrabel's a very strong personality. I think they could maybe bring him in. If it's, like I said, if it's a bargain basement price, that would give their offense a little bit more juice, even though they've got Adrian Peterson now filling in for the departed Henry, as he was obviously injured and down now for the rest of the year. So very, very difficult situation, but seeing where he goes, I believe someone ultimately will claim him on waivers, and I don't think he'll probably end up getting probably through the mid-20s. So there might be a team, heck, the Chicago Bears, even maybe throw out a waiver claim on him to bring him in to help bolster their young quarterback in an offense that's really void of playmakers right now, and to give Justin Fields some much added relief because all they really have, is Allen Robinson, and he needs some help. And who knows if he'll even be there next year. So there's a lot of ways to look at it as far as who could bring him on. But if he's cheap, I think he'll obviously have many more claims than the alternative. And that's what the goal of the Cleveland Browns was, since this priority list is going to be from worst to ultimately first. Talked about Kansas City, Green Bay, obviously a huge game, game of the week, Fox evening window, afternoon slate, going to Kansas City, playing there, no Aaron Rodgers, with being in the COVID protocols. And so you've got Jordan Love, going out there, making his debut this season for the Packers. Didn't really look all that great. Brought a ton of pressure did the Kansas City Chiefs. Steve Spagnuolo, their defensive coordinator is known to bring heat, loves to bring pressure, mix up coverages on the back end. He did that brilliantly, and he was going against a young quarterback who didn't really know what to expect. And I think we maybe have taken the greatness of Aaron Rodgers for granted. And you heard Troy Aikman say this during the telecast, that if Aaron Rodgers was in there, they're not going to be blitzing him the same way they're blitzing Jordan Love. Now, everybody can say, yeah, you understand that it's a veteran quarterback versus a young guy. But Jordan Love is not a rookie now. It's his second season. He hasn't played a lot, obviously, but he's been in the system and he knows how it works. But being a quick processor like Aaron is, being as athletic as Aaron is, and this is the other key that people don't understand, is his quick release and his accuracy is undeniable. And so you saw Jordan Love have the ability to get some passes off, get the ball out of his hand, and do so in a pretty impressive way, but the accuracy wasn't there. He had Devontae Adams with a step down the field. He had Valdez-Scantling with a step down the field. Like, he had guys who were open, but he wasn't able to get it to them in an accurate way. And that's how good Aaron Rodgers is. And we take it for granted because we watch him go out there and he's doing his little discount double check. And there's a certain smugness and maybe arrogance or quiet confidence to him. And so we don't really realize how good it is. But man, to watch him drift away off his back foot and flip one out to the flat or flip one 15 yards and it go right over defender's ear and right where it needs to be, you saw those balls falling 2 and 3 yards from their destination. And that's how good Aaron is. And that's how much he means to this Packers squad. And you could see the frustration with the receivers because they've been spoiled. Devontae Adams knows. He knows exactly how good Aaron Rodgers is. And that's why he probably doesn't want to play in Green Bay if Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be there, because he's such a talented player. Now on to the second piece of the Aaron Rodgers conundrum. Misleads the public a little bit. Asked if he was vaccinated, said he was immunized, had people on social media intentionally deceiving the public. Well, I don't know of a deception that isn't intentional. It's not like you unintentionally deceive somebody. That would just be a mistake. He chose his words very carefully, so he didn't lie, but there was maybe an effort to mislead and not have anyone ask a follow-up question, so he didn't have to deal with everything. And I understand that, and I respect Aaron's privacy and everything that he's done. And so now we're beginning to see some of the fallout here. And we've come to a point in time where no one can have a differing opinion, especially about their own medical situation. And that's funny. I've had people that have reached out to me, on social media, both sides of this thing. Aaron's a bad person for not being vaccinated, putting himself in danger, teammates, media, even though his teammates knew, coaches knew, everybody knew they were respecting the proper protocols inside. He didn't wear a mask sometimes on the sideline, didn't wear a mask, and was doing live media interviews. So obviously he was breaking that. The NFL knew it. They knew the situation. They were wholly complicit in it. But people don't want to respect the fact that, hey, maybe he's doing that. And it's awesome that I've had some people that reached out like, hey, just got my booster shot, just got vaccinated, whatever it is. I still respect his right to choose. That's great. So do I. I respect everybody. Whether you want to do it or not, that's up to you, own personal decision. And so, Aaron, the sponsorship element comes in. Would he be losing sponsors? So one of his healthcare sponsors up there, he was a partner with, they chose to move on. State Farm choosing to hang with him. I don't know if there's something contractual in there that maybe there's a long runway with this and they couldn't get out of it. Who knows? I didn't see any Aaron Rodgers commercials for State Farm during the games on Sunday. Now, I don't know if that was just coincidence. I don't believe that it was. They had some generic ones. They had a ton with Pat Mahomes. They usually rotate and alternate those every other commercial break, so you're not inundated and overwhelmed by just one guy. Curious to see when he comes back if they begin to sprinkle him in. If they just don't go overwhelmingly over the top the first weekend, I would understand, but start sliding some of those in and hope that this story dissipates. But they said that they wanted to respect his own point of view. I think that's a fair assessment. And it's awesome that there's some companies and people in society who maybe you may not agree with everything that we have to say, but I can respect that you have your own differing point of view, and we can be fine with that. And you don't necessarily have to hate somebody and want to see them like lose everything that they've done. Aaron Rodgers has done a lot of good things in his life. I don't know if this was necessarily something that was, quote, bad. Some people view it as that, made a personal choice and didn't really feel the need to reveal it to anyone, but didn't necessarily lie about it either. There was just some wordsmanship, if you will, wordsmithing. And it's kind of how Aaron rolls. But make no mistake about it, the Green Bay Packers need him back. And he is playing at an MVP level again this year. And I would anticipate, just knowing Aaron a little, that he'll be on a war path when he comes back to try to play the best football that he ultimately can, because he's a guy that likes to go out there and prove to everybody how good he is. So moving on from that, good to see Aaron and State Farm staying together, at least for the time being. Now, there was some disturbing stuff that happened in the NFL this week, just as there was last week, surrounding the Oakland Raiders, or Las Vegas Raiders now. You had Henry Ruggs, obviously, with the automobile accident, crashing his Corvette, 156 miles an hour, killing a lady. Obviously, your hearts and prayers and minds go out to the family of the victim and who was involved. Other news, though, now, cornerback Damon Arnett was just released. And why? Well, there's a TikTok video of him cruising around, and he's brandishing a firearm, talking about killing whoever he's referring to. And I guess one of the messages that was sent at him. Oh, and this is where we are. The need to go to social media and live your life and understand, like, you may be doing something. And I'm not familiar with the gun laws in the state of Nevada, but I don't know if there's ever a reason to be brandishing a firearm in a video that's going to be posted on social media talking about taking someone else's life. It just doesn't sound intelligent. And it's really not wise, especially given what just happened last week. Your coach got fired for some things that he put out in emails a decade ago when he wasn't even the coach of the Raiders. You just had a teammate take someone's life in a DUI accident, driving at excess speeds of 150 miles an hour. And now you're going to go do this, Damon. And I know Damon personally, and it's amazing because I find him to be a very charming person. This is a guy who came to my son's birthday party without any compensation. 8-year-old birthday party, 9-year-old birthday party, and signed autographs, took pictures, and could not be nicer and more friendly with the kids. And I really like Damon. It was a bad mistake that he made. He should not have done that. Cost him his job. See if he gets picked up. It's a first-round talent out there on the street. You know, his play has been a little bit inconsistent at times, but I don't understand why guys do this stuff. It's out of the realm of thought and possibility for me why someone would do that and ultimately potentially cost them their job. So that's going to put a little bow on the NFL. Transitioning to college football. A lot of crazy things we saw this weekend in college football. Things that are becoming tougher and more inexplicable. Georgia keeps rolling. They're in their own category right now. Until I see otherwise, I'm putting the Georgia Bulldogs number one, and it's really a battle to try to figure out 2 through maybe 6, 7, 8, 9. I don't know. I mean, Alabama was that team at the beginning of the year. They've obviously lost the game, but they've struggled a handful of times, and then they struggled mightily with LSU at home, a program that's already fired their coach, had a number of guys opt out, and you're sitting here playing, for a chance that if you win out, you're going to the college football playoff, playing for a national championship, and you're messing around with the LSU Tigers. LSU's a talented team. I understand that talented roster. Coach was fired. A lot of players have opted out. Their secondary was pieced together, and Bama had a hard time moving the ball. And so they win that game by a score. But if you think about it, the Tigers had 3 drives that finished in Bama territory to close out the game. One was inside the 10. They had one down there trying to punch it in and couldn't do it. Alabama, I think, is talented, but they do have some chinks in the armor like they've never probably had before. I think a lot of that's due to consistency. And I'll get into this at the end of why I think all of these things have happened. You had Bama, you had Michigan State. We talked about it being a trap game versus Purdue. Purdue, really talented wideouts. Michigan State struggles defending the pass, but you thought they'd just be able to outscore them. They're going into West Lafayette. If you say it's a trap game all week, can it still be a trap game? Michigan State's defense couldn't come up big when they needed to. Offensively, they scored 29 points, but they gave up, almost 500 yards passing. They didn't have Jalen Naylor, they're one of their star wide receivers. So that impacted the offense a little bit. But ultimately, the game's 37-29. You're down 8. All you need is a stop to be able to get the ball back, drive down, score, and get a 2-point conversion. There was going to have to be some help offensively to get that done, but defensively, they could not get the stop. They end up yielding a field goal, which puts it at a 2-possession game, 11 points. And the game at that point is all but over. And so, like, as I look at the Michigan State Spartans, you knew it was a trap game. You knew what they were good at. You knew David Bell was going to be out there and be really, really good. You couldn't slow him down, and it's perplexing and befuddling. Mel Tucker, their head coach, defensive backs coach by trade. Defensive back play was bad, and the tackling was not good on that side of the football. And so Spartans got to clean it up. As college football rankings come out, we'll see where they all fall with everything that goes into that. But perplexing. Number 3, just got the victory. They've got Ohio State coming up. They've got Penn State, on the horizon. And this is the game that you ultimately lose. Big Ten can't have nice things. Should have been big time matchups at the end of the year. And I think it still will be. But I think it showed that Michigan State does have some flaws, does have some weaknesses. You go out west, Oregon taking on Washington. A lot of the same. Washington scores first, early turnovers by Oregon. Lots of issues that they had to deal with. If it wasn't for a safety late in the game by the Ducks, it would have been a 1-possession game as well. The Oregon rushes for 300 yards, but it's just mind-boggling. Like, we talked about this, potentially a trap game. Going into Washington, tough environment to play in. Everybody knows and understands that. It's just amazing that Oregon wasn't better. This is a Washington team that got beat up by Michigan to start the year. Yes, I know they're healthier now, but it's just befuddling to me how we're beginning to see some of this in the parity that is existing in college football for the first time in quite some time, either with losses or just really, really close games. Ohio State, Nebraska, similar situation. Ohio State starts fast. Looks like they finally have everything going. Heck, they passed for 400 yards, did CJ Stroud, but they couldn't convert it to points. Crossing the 50, it got a little muddy. Weren't able to convert in the red zone, and just had some ill-opportune penalties. Stroud has to probably run it a little bit, scramble when it's there. And I'm not talking about taking hits and getting knocked around. I'm talking about taking 6 or 7 yards when it's available. Because here's what happens. As quarterbacks scramble and buy time, you always want them to keep their eyes down the field. That's what winning quarterbacks do. Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, Peyton Manning, guys who are runners, guys who aren't runners, Aaron Rodgers, Pat Mahomes. And you see how good they are. They always buy time and look down the field. But they also understand if there's 7 or 8 yards to get and there's an 18-yard gap between you and the next defender, go get the 7 or 8 yards, slide or get out of bounds. Because in doing that, what it does is it will draw the defenders up when you start breaking the pocket, and that will allow you to hit those intermediate throws over their head. They will have to respect you as a runner, and you don't have to do it all the time. It's once a game, maybe twice, heck, 3 times if you're lucky. Tom Brady doesn't run much. He runs when he has to. Same thing with Mahomes, same thing with Rodgers. All of these guys, they pick their spots, but they do it when you're going to give it to them, and it's like stealing. It's free yardage, and it's a free conversion. That's what Ohio State and Stroud have to get to. Defense for the Buckeyes playing much, much better. Have to clean up the big plays in the passing game. Gave up a couple of those, but 34 sacks getting done this season. Looking good. Have really upped their pressure on the quarterback. Done some with the linebackers bringing heat. A lot of it with just the defensive line. They're getting held all over the place, but offensively need more continuity on the offensive line. Have to be able to get more push to establish that running game. Have to take the free yards when you can get them at quarterback. But heck, they beat Nebraska 26-17, 9-point game. Another really, really close game in Lincoln. Talking about, other teams in the Plain States. Tulsa taking Cincinnati to the wire. Cincinnati jumps out, 14 points right off Jump Street. Game days there. Nippert Stadium, the Queen City. It's looking like it's going to be great. And then all of a sudden you see Tulsa just chip their way back, and they have a goal line stand, Cincinnati does, to ultimately win that game where the ball is fumbled crossing the goal line. Reviewed it a million times, called it a fumble, stayed at a fumble. Cincinnati is better than Tulsa. They're 21 points better than Tulsa, maybe 24. They're starting to get everyone's best shots now, and it's a little bit different. Cincinnati was used to kind of, being near the top of the heap in the AAC. Now talk of going to the Big 12, talk of getting in the college football playoff. They're the hunted on a national level, and there's going to be pressure. There's going to be expectations. I think their guys understand that and they know it and never apologize for winning. But if games are closer than they should be, sometimes a little bit of that fear and doubt begin to creep in. And there's an urgency and a little bit of a panic, maybe more so than there was before. Cincinnati, same thing, trying to get it done. Close game, another top 10 team. They win, they don't win well. And now dropping down the line a little bit, I wish Auburn would have got the win. Bad Bo Nix was back again, 20 of 41, about $150 in the air, throwing an interception. Auburn Tigers, they travel to College Station, they lose. It's not a pretty game. They're not able to get a lot of offense going. I was thinking that Auburn maybe could have a backdoor way into the SEC championship if they could find a way to beat Bama at the end, win out, get there. It would have been phenomenal to see after early season struggles. And it seemed like Bo Nix was turning the corner, but there's still a lot of inconsistencies there. And he's not where he needs to be as a quarterback. A&M gets the victory. So they'll probably be jumping up. Wouldn't surprise to see them now, potentially maybe 11, possibly in the top 10. It'll really depend on how far Michigan State drops back. And then Minnesota, I thought was the dark horse to win the Big Ten West. They looked really good. They'd been running the football. They were on like their 7th running back. They've had a ton of injuries, but they've been playing good defense. Tanner Morgan had been managing the offense, and they've been running the football really well. Well, they run into Illinois. Illinois scores on their first 2 drives. Minnesota has an early turnover, so it's 14-0. Illinois doesn't score again. They punt the football just about every possession after that, and they're able to hang on 14-6. So here's what Illinois has done. Illinois has beaten Nebraska to open the season. They got beat by UT San Antonio. They've gotten beat around multiple times this year. Then they beat Penn State. And now all of a sudden, they beat Minnesota and they start looking good. Like, it's crazy what Brett Bielema has got going there. And so they're showing signs of life, especially after he called them out a couple of weeks ago. They're starting to do some impressive things. But the Illinois Fighting Illini look better than I think people anticipated them looking, at this point in the year. Looking at the rankings, I don't know. You're going to have Georgia 1. You drop Bama, I don't know. I mean, Cincinnati, you can't really move them up much. Ohio State and Oregon didn't really look any better. Does Michigan State, where do they fall? Do they fall to 9? Do they fall to 10? I mean, Purdue's a team that they did knock off number 2 Iowa. They just beat number 3 Michigan State. It's not like they're garbage. They'll slide into the top 25. They did get beat pretty good by Wisconsin. They can't run the ball, but it doesn't really seem to matter. I think a lot of this stuff will probably stay kind of status quo, sliding some teams up. I think Michigan State will probably drop back, in my estimation, to maybe somewhere between 9 and 11. Let me go with probably 10 or 11. Oklahoma was off, so they didn't have the ability to impress or potentially, muck it up anymore. And so the committee's trying to figure these things out. And who has good wins? Everyone's got some average to below average wins. It's so frustrating. I'm racking my mind of trying to rationalize it. But if there was ever a year that they could just scrap it and say, you know what, this is the year to have a playoff, it would be this year. Because I can't sit here and definitively tell you who I think the second best team is, let alone the 4th or 5th, 6th best team. I think all of those teams could be the same teams intermixed and just woven around week to week. And so this would be the year. And so Georgia's playing well. They still have their issues at quarterback. We'll see if they can continue to get healthy at wide receiver and how that looks. I think Tennessee will give them a game this week, but we'll get into that later in the week. But this playoff ranking is going to be something as it comes out on Tuesday night. Well, that is all for Carp's Corner. Thank you for tuning in. Subscribe and look forward to next time.